Welcome, Black Carnivores. So today we have author and food, sugar, grain addiction specialist Cynthia Myers Morrison, and she is here to talk to us about one of the most important tools for addiction recovery, and that is community. So I wonder if you have ever asked yourself any of these questions. Why can't I stop eating carbs and sugar? How do I deal with cravings? I know I feel better eating a carnivore diet, so why do I keep eating sugar and carbs? Why do I keep doing this? If you've asked yourself these questions, stay tuned. This conversation is for you. And yeah, and let's dive right into it. So let me give you a little bit of background about Cynthia. She is a therapist in private practice with 22 years of abstinence from grains and sugar after decades of freedom from alcohol and drugs. She holds a doctorate in education and 3 master's degrees. She has spent years in deep study with experts of all kinds of addictions, and her current certifications focus on food, sugar, grain, those addictions, brain chemistry, and long term recovery. And in addition to being a food addiction counselor, she is the author of The Fix for Cravings, and she is a public speaker. So I am really excited to let you all know that I'm going to launch a group for us in the Black Carnivore community. For anyone who feels like you struggle with sugar, if you think you might have a sugar addiction, or you just struggle and you just can't seem to stay on track for a long period of time, then let's come together. I would like to actually use this book, The Fix for Cravings, to kind of work, use it as a base for the group to work together and to support one another. So make sure that you click the link below in the description and sign up, and let's get together and help one another, because working together always is more successful than doing this on your own. Okay, so let's dive in, Cynthia. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. And I'm just thrilled to be here. And I have shivers in my spine about this group growing and doing the process is a really gentle way of moving into the the food and eating program that you personally and individually want in your life. So it isn't fixed. It's not something that has to be a particular way. There are a number of those, and I can talk about those too. But the Fix for Cravings book is for those people who want to gently move into the process and to find ways not only to let go of sugar, but to let go of other behaviors that aren't serving you. So whatever those behaviors might be as you come across them. So I'm just thrilled, really thrilled. And please let me know in any way that I can help. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, do you mind telling us a little of your story? Like, how did you discover your addictions and figure out how to get into recovery?
My story isn't one that's common. Um, I it is common in a lot of ways, but uncommon in one particular way. I went to a swingers party in Hollywood in 1971 and ended up in rooms where the host of the swingers party took me. One was related to food recovery, one was related to alcohol and drug recovery. And 71 was early. I was 24 years old. So, but I was a walking dead person already. I was in size about the same as I am now, but I knew that I was crazy in the head with food, that when I started eating, there was not enough. There wasn't an off button. I wanted more of whatever it was. So I would intermittently starve myself. Long before intermittent fasting, I was just starving myself, and I would starve until late in the day, and then I would just gorge, binge eat essentially. So that was my pattern. And I was a teacher, so I was irritable a lot of the time. I think back to my students of those days and I think, oh, I wasn't nice. I was working in an all-Black community within Los Angeles at that time at past year of junior high school. So some of you may have been my students. No, I don't know. I run into them sometimes or receive letters sometimes. So happy to hear. And if I have amends to make, please let me make the amends right here, right now. So, but I went to that swingers party not with any intention of getting sober, clean, abstinent, no intention at all. And ended up in these rooms where people were talking about those things. And I thought, oh no, I'm not one of those. But the food, I did recognize that that was a problem, but I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to use the programs that were available to me. They worked. I tried the one that I'm on now. I'm now 75 years old. So there have been 50 and a half years between then and now. And in those 50 and a half of those, I'm without alcohol and drugs, which is utterly miraculous. I would be dead if a guy had not come up to me and said, Cindy, if you continue drinking and using the way you are, you will die. And I thought, no, these are not problems. But they were. So he had convinced me that I needed to stop doing those things that I was doing. But with the food, I tried the program that I actually do now, which is a food program. I don't eat grains or sugar, and I weigh and measure my food, and I eat 3 meals a day. So you can probably figure out how that works. But I've been doing that for 23 years. So there's 27 years that I didn't do that. I tried all sorts of other alternatives, lots and lots of other alternatives while I was sober and clean, but not clean from the food. And I got crazier and crazier. My pictures show, some of the pictures are, pretty large person there. My top weight was 224 pounds and I'm 5'4" tall. And I'm not, I'm not a big person, but I thought I was. I thought I was large boned. I was stunned when I found the measurement that if you put your fingers around and your fingers, I can't get my hand that way, but if your middle finger and your thumb overlap, you're small boned, and I'm small boned. I thought, good grief, how could that be? But I am underneath all of the extra weight that I carried. So I had diligently tried to lose weight and had dieted and, really, I was trying to be careful. And for a whole year, and I lost 25 pounds, which was wonderful. I got down to 199. And my allergies are driving me crazy today. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I don't have a cold or anything. It's just, I think it's mesquite in this country where I live in New Mexico. So
that
anyway,
makes for great barbecue.
It does. It does. But so I had all of these kinds of things that I was looking at, and I totally lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? So I had gone to the swingers party. I'd gotten sober. I had been sober all those years, but I was still eating, and I'd lost the 25 pounds and gotten down to 199, and I couldn't lose any more. And then I had eaten something, and one of the things is about eating things that bother you. One of my bothers is suicidal thinking. So I had eaten something the night before. The next morning, I woke up thinking, I'm going to kill myself today. Now, this is not an ordinary way to wake up. This has to do with something we're putting into our bodies. It's not even an emotional thing. It's a body chemistry thing, a brain chemistry thing. It's the dopaminergic system in our brains, our reward system. It affected me badly to eat the things I was eating, very badly. So that little voice said, oh, go to where those people are. And I went to a meeting that was about my alcohol consumption and sat in a room with several hundred people, and there were only a few chairs that were left when I arrived there, but there was one that was next to a woman that was in a food program, and I knew that she was. And I said, "Are you still doing that program for food?" And she said, "Yes," and wrote down a little address. And I went there later that day, the same day. I had not killed myself. And they were talking in this language. I thought, oh, I don't know this language. Whatever they're talking about, I don't even know what it means. But someone asked me, could I commit one meal? And I was really snippety, but I said yes, and committed food that was in my refrigerator, and woke up the next morning not wanting to kill myself. So with one meal abstinent, I no longer wanted to kill myself. I thought that was pretty astonishing. So I called and committed 3 meals for that day. And that was the beginning. I have not had grain or sugar since that day. Now it's 23 years. 23 years. So that's a long time between grain and sugar consumption in my experience. Prior to that, I had never had that experience. But in the intervening time, I had lots of days when I didn't do it the way that they wanted it done. So that wasn't the first day of my committed abstinence, but I have 23 years of committed abstinence too. So anyway, but it was such a miraculous thing to wake up without wanting to kill myself, and to feel this sense of hope that there is a way, and there is a community, and community is really important, as Dave Wolf and the Sugar X Global people talk about. All of the different 12-step groups that include Food Addicts Anonymous, Food Addicts in Recovery, Grace Eaters Anonymous. It sounds like I say Grace Eaters, but it's GREYSHEAT.ERS. And their Overeaters Anonymous is the grandmother of all, and they're the ones that started with the gray sheet, in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, so, and there are others too. I mean, the SCAA, or Sugar and Carbs Anonymous. I mean, there are ones that are more 12-step, ones that are less 12-step, and lots and lots of different others that I haven't named. So there are 12-step programs out there if you want them. Sugar X Global is one that Dave Wolf, my colleague in making the fix for Cravings, he and Judy Wolf and Anna Freeling are actively doing things now. So they have a Crush Your Cravings, a 5-day Crush Your Cravings regularly. So please participate. And if this is heard before the end of the year, they have a special too. So take advantage if you have the opportunity. So there are things today that are available that when in 71 were really pretty unusual. I mean, it wasn't large populations of people that were eating the way that we eat today. Today, with the high fructose corn syrup, the grains and processed food and ultra processed foods, we are much more in jeopardy every single day, every single person, everywhere in the world, because of these ultra processed foods, highly processed, filled with, as I said, high fructose corn syrup and sugar. And we're much more in jeopardy now. And epigenetically, I think that's another aspect that some people might be interested in. I do genograms. And when we look back in history at families, there are families that, have more and more and more food addiction manifesting in obesity and diabetes and metabolic syndrome and, the whole realm now than ever before. And Alzheimer's, which is considered to be the third diabetes now, diabetes 1, 2, and now 3. So we are epigenetically carrying forward the genetic changes that happened perhaps as early as The time of the Hungarian wars, the wars that decimated Central Europe, and those people were leaving Central Europe. Those people were leaving Wales, where my ancestors came from, large numbers of them. Some are German, some are Welsh and British, and they came to this country bringing their hungry bodies. Those bodies were carrying that epigenetic change of, I am going to give to my babies the capacity to take in food and hold on to calories, because God knows they're going to need them, because I am hungry. And so all these years later, all of us who came with those heritages have intermarried, and epigenetically we have changed. We have those carrying, the Buddhists call them the grandparent seeds, and we carry those. So then when we have this food environment that is filled with high fructose corn syrup, lots of grains, lots of fat, lots of sugar, lots, and it's all around us. You go into a market, I still go around the outside edges of the market, but even there are things that I don't eat. And then I go into the gas station to pay my bill. Oh my gosh, is there anything there I can eat besides the water in the water bottles? So all of those kinds of things are changes in our environment that increase the accessibility of all of this, increase the capacity for my eyes to see it. And those have changes that change the brain, that we look through our eyes, we see these things, and those can be visual triggers. Now, for me, I look at those things and I see art, flat art. I do not see food. It's not food for me. I can't eat it. If I choose to put it into my body, I go back to that suicidal crazy person. I don't want to be there. I had other crazy, I had labels, a lot of colorful labels. And now I would not earn those labels. I wouldn't, because of the food that I eat today. So it's possible to absolutely have a changed and transformed life. And one other example I'll give is that before I was sober, but not abstinent from grains and sugar, and I had hundreds of relationships, hundreds with many people. I'm bisexual, so one of those was actually the healthiest one of all of those, was 14 years with a woman, and I had 2 husbands before that. I now have been married to the same husband for 22 years. And I don't think it's surprising that this 22-year monogamous relationship coincides with the 23 years of abstinence from grain and sugar. So no matter what problems you're having in your life, it may be that underneath all those problems, the reason to stop eating sugar, for sure, is, first of all, it's toxic. Second of all, there is not one single thing that requires sugar. Not one. Read Robert Lustig. I mean, he puts it out in scientific terms. We don't need sugar at all for any reason. We get what we need from many other substances that we can put into our body. So Georgia Ede is a woman that is a psychiatrist, and she starts by identifying people who are eating the standard American diet, SAD diet, and starts with paleo. If that has too many carbs, she goes to low carb, high fat. Then if that's too many carbs, she goes to keto. And then if that's too many carbs, to clinical keto. And that's too many carbs, to carnivore. So if you've already joined the carnivore community and you have an inkling that this may be where you belong, don't leave. Don't leave. If you need to leave, just go back a teeny bit to one of those others along the continuum, but do not leave. Do not leave. Find where you are comfortable and And if you need to change a little bit, but never the sugar. For me, it is no sugar, no grains, no alcohol, no matter what, no matter what, no matter who, no matter where, no matter when. You get the idea.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, the way we do it in the Black Carnivore community, basically, I sort of outlined there's like three buckets. You can be strict carnivore, where you're eating only from the animal kingdom, period. Then you can be moderate carnivore, where you include low sugar fruits like avocados and olives, also coffee, herbs and spices, that sort of thing. And then you can be relaxed carnivore, where you also include artificial sweeteners. If you go out to a restaurant and you get a side of vegetables, you eat that, and you're a little bit more relaxed about it. And then I tell people kind of move through those, decide. You could be strict during the week and relax on the weekends. It's kind of up to you, but you have to match what you're doing with what your goals are. So if you're trying to treat cancer, then you're going to have to be really strict. But if you are at your goal weight and you have achieved your health goals, then you can be relaxed and kind of switch back and forth between those. So that's kind of the way we think about it. I don't know what you think about that.
I think that's fabulous. And it gives enough flex room to be comfortable with what you are doing personally. And that's really important too. I mean, I am one of those people, I love my food. I enjoy my food. I want to enjoy my food. It is a pleasurable activity, but I want it to be within the boundaries, clear set boundaries, just as you've described. Whatever your own boundaries are, mine are a little bit different. I eat more vegetables, and I have I have berries in the morning sometimes. So, and I have a fruit per day. But that whatever you found works for you, do it. That's what I always say, do it. If it works for you, do it. If you find that it's no longer working, like from 24 to 75, there are aging things that come in. Who go figure? But as I have aged, like everything was wonderful from 50 to about 70. And then 70 came and I was like, I'm eating too much food. This is more than I want. And so I talked with my advisors and agreed to make some changes. So increasing protein and decreasing some of the other quantities. And that made me much more comfortable. And now at 75, I'm like, I continue to go to doctors for various things, and I found that I have Hashimoto's, so a thyroid difficulty that I didn't have previously. However, it's one that I have to stop eating red meat and dairy from cows. And I thought, oh, this is not good. These are things I love. But I've come to accept that there are lamb, goat, there is chicken, turkey, fish. I love, salmon I love, and a lot of canned things too, fish-wise. I can eat goat kefir milk, goat cheese, goat dairy yogurt, all of which I'm just like, this is fine. What's the big deal? It's okay. So, but this is a change. That moment of change was when I didn't want. But as soon as I've made the change, not eating butter was like, oh my gosh, I don't know. Can I live without butter? But then I found out I can eat ghee, which, hey, that's fine for me. So for me, those changes, while they looked like, oh no, this is a huge change, are not huge changes. They're incremental changes that I can make and feel better. And my Hashimoto's, hopefully the numbers will get better or whatever they do. But I I feel better already, and it's only been a few weeks. So I urge
Excellent.
you to do what you need to do to make the changes you know you need to make.
Excellent. Well, can I ask you more about addiction? Because listening to your story, it's like, you know, I mean, I feel like all my years of like dieting and being focused on my body, my belief about the addiction was that the problem is the consumption of the substance. But, what you describe is sort of the mental problems that that come, and like I never really looked at that before. So, sort of what is the addiction? Like the substance is a part of it, but it really seems like it's a whole brain thing, and and that's the bigger part. So, what do you say about that?
That is a great question. Great question. Because when I was in the food, I only looked at the size of my body. And my body, when I came in 71, was not very different from it is today. You have those pictures. The picture of me in uh, a green dress, that's a picture from when just before I came to the programs. And I'm not grossly obese. I mean, I'm not morbidly obese that I came to be later, but I knew that I had crazy in the head with food, that I was not normal like my mother, like my mother. So my sister died at 368 pounds. So, and she was tall, she was close to 6 foot, but 368 pounds was more than her body could tolerate. And she had breast cancer and died of metastases. So
I'm sorry.
it is, thank you. It is in our family. I mean, it is not a small problem. And when I thought that she was 100 pounds overweight, and I thought, oh, I could never be like that. So terrible, rude, awful, judgmental in the worst extreme. And then I gained 100 pounds. I had a 100-pound bite. I went from being 124 to being 224. And it was horrific. I did not want to gain that weight. I didn't want to. So the weight is a huge thing in our family. I mean, in our society. But that's only the visible piece. When they say about the stigma of this disease, the visible stigma, we have the stigma, visibly carried on our bodies for some of us, but others are food addicts that are the normal size or skinny. They can be very skinny and still be a food addict, because it is not just the substance that we're putting into our body. Once I stopped putting the substances into my body, I still had behaviors. I still wanted more. I still wanted to eat, even from my allowed foods. I wanted more than, and that's why I'm one of those who weighs and measures my food. Some people don't have to do that. If they're eating the foods that they can eat and that they can tolerate, their bodies say stop. Mine doesn't have a stop button. So I weigh and measure my food to consistently get enough food, because I always would eat too much and then I'd eat too little, then I'd eat too much, then I'd eat too little. And to have a consistent amount over time has been really useful to me. I mean, and as I said, that's not everybody. But in addition to the physical, and that is taken care of by removing the substances to which we are responsive in a negative way, whatever those substances are. I have one friend that was in the Caribbean. Her heritage is there, and she happens to be Caucasian, but there are many Black families that come with Caribbean heritage that fat is a terrible problem for them, because it triggers the desire for more. And she would say to me, Cindy, if I have a piece of fat on the meat, which is absolutely okay for many people within a quantity, that she wanted a bottle of olive oil to drink it. It's that kind of triggering of hers is an acetylcholine problem. It's a brain problem, but not the dopamine problem. It's the acetylcholine problem. So until she found the solution for that, fat was a terrible thing. She could not eat fat that was recognizable without it triggering that for her.
Hmm.
So sugar is like that for all of us, that we eat sugar and we want more sugar. That is a toxin. It's a toxin. So what happens with the brain? The reward system is there for us to have sex, to have food, to make families, to have shelter. We have this reward system that gives us that desire to have those things, to live, to continue staying alive as an individual, and then in a couple, then in a family, in a society, a community. And what happens is that dopamine system is hijacked by sugar. It's hijacked so that we start to want to have more and more and more. And then it does this terrible thing where tolerance comes in, and the tolerance closes down it says, we've got too many of these open spaces, close them down, we've got too many. And we need more in order to get the same high. And that's called tolerance. But it's a terrible thing, because then, for me, I would be searching for something. I couldn't figure out what it was that was going to satisfy that hunger, that craving that I had. I didn't know what it would be to solve it, but I was searching and eating and eating and eating, trying to find that right thing that would make me feel, oh, okay, now I'm okay. So
Hmm.
that's a brain system thing that's supposed to be working within normal ranges. My sex addiction was totally crazy. I mean, I was like, if you think about how adolescent boys are reported to be thinking of sex constantly 100% of the time. I don't know that that's true. I never was an adolescent boy, but I had too much testosterone for a female, I can assure you, because when I'd have a period, the progesterone in my body and the testosterone in my body were at odds, so that I had late luteal phase dysphoric disorder. It's PMS on steroids. And I had that for years. I would be in such terrible pain, physically, vomiting, diarrhea, all this that had to do with my hormones being out of whack. I was molested as a young child, and my hormones were always out of whack. I mean, I take hormone replacement therapy today with a doctor that works very closely with me to um, maintain enough in my system that I feel good, but not so much that I'm going to run into difficulties. And I'm one of those that I've tried to come off of the hormone replacement therapy many times over the last 35 years or 40 years or so, because I had used Depo-Provera at one time because my hormones were so messed up. All of these are integrated with the sugar addiction, because I
Hmm.
exacerbated all of my addictions from my earliest one, which is food. Food is the
Right.
earliest one in my life. I mean, I can remember stealing food when I was 5 years old. I also drank that day too, and I knew it was wrong. I had that sense of, this is wrong. That's one of my earliest memories, earliest memories.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
yeah. And I do sugar assessment, Bitten Johnson's sugar assessment. And many of the people that I do the assessment on are people that have 4 or 5 years old to maybe a little bit older than that, but early memories are of food and how they wanted more. They craved it. They were stealing to get it, doing things that they knew were inappropriate, even at that early age. So I attribute that to, that's about the time that we have language that has attachments in our brain that we can remember things and draw the memories out. So my food attachment is probably from earlier. I just don't have the memories. So thank you.
Wow.
Great,
Well, I
great question.
definitely, I had that test too, and yeah, my earliest my memory went back to, think I was 4, and there was was at a birthday party, and there was like a cake with M&Ms on it, and we left before the cake was cut, so I never got a piece. And I mean, that cake haunted me. I still thought about it for years. Like, man,
Yeah,
that would have been a really
yeah,
good piece of cake.
yeah.
So yeah.
It would have been too. You remember it, but you don't have to eat it today. We can have all those other things that are just so
I
enjoyable.
mean, I've eaten
You
all the things. I've already eaten it 20 times over. I do not have to eat it today. I don't
There we
ever
go.
need
Not again.
to.
When
Yeah.
sometimes we can say things like, I have had all that I needed for my whole lifetime. There's no need for more. I do want to put in about bipolar disease is something that, you know, you have the ups and downs. And I had a friend who has now passed, but who has said, life has its ups and its downs. Life has its ups and its downs, meaning we all have ups and downs. And he had paid thousands of dollars for that information and passed it on so freely. And now I think my ups and downs, what was diagnosed as bipolar disease, I was diagnosed as schizophrenic when I was in my 20s. And what is the aspect that goes back through all of those labels? Those labels are, in my estimation, attributable to my food consumption and alcohol, grains, sugar, all of that, that I was eating and putting into my body these chemicals that they didn't work for me. And all these labels are identifiers of substances in my body that didn't work for me and didn't work for my brain chemistry. So when you took out those substances, my ups and downs, like I still have ups and downs. They're there. I get disappointed. I get my feelings hurt. I get, upset with somebody. I say bad words sometimes. Oh my goodness. Uh, I'm a little manic sometimes, like just not like I used to be, where I would go into a store and buy $300 worth of stuff when I was making $8 an hour. That's manic behavior. But
Hmm.
I'm not like that now. I may go buy something that I didn't need, and I may return it because I really didn't need it and realize I don't need that. So that kind of smoothing out of the ups and downs is something that's absolutely doable by changing what we put into our bodies and then working on all the trauma, codependency, etc., whatever your additional flavors are. So, and we do have to work on them. I mean, they don't just instantaneously disappear. I'm not saying that,
Hmm.
but getting help with the things that you've needed help with, that's something that I only had the wherewithal to do when I stopped putting in the negative substances. So I couldn't work on my migraines until I got abstinent. When I got abstinent, then the migraines were continuing, even in abstinence, but I could then get help and supplements to eradicate those. So, vitamins and supplements can work wonders. And B2, CoQ10, and GABA were instrumental in eradicating my migraines, but I could only be consistent in dealing with them after I'd let go of the grains and sugar. So,
Hmm.
it's that kind of consistency of effort over time. They didn't disappear immediately, but over time I could find additional solutions for everything. So,
Nice. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the recovery process and building community. So you discover the method that you outline in the book, and have you, well, I guess you've done it multiple times. What's it been like, and how have people responded to it?
it is one of those processes that community is so important. I mean, it is one of those things that I, as in the throes of addiction, I was alone. It didn't matter whether I was with a lot of people or not. Physically, I was alone. I would be the one standing by the food and eating while all those people were over there talking. Or if I were talking, I was still eating, and the eating was the most important thing. So that's one piece of it. But building the community and having people have the opportunity to share about what they're experiencing, and to find out that I'm not alone, that others are experiencing these things that I'm experiencing. So when we look at the book and the process of using it, it changes lives. I mean, it truly changes lives, where people have the opportunity to share that kind of initial awareness of, oh, I am one of many. I am not an isolate. I'm not so different that I can't share what's happening inside of me with others. The childhood experiences, adverse childhood experiences, that is one of the chapters at the beginning there. That is really useful to know that we can change those responses. We don't have to stay stuck in the responses that we have had previously. When I was upset about anything, I ate. When I was elated about anything, I ate. I don't have to do that over and over again. I can change that, and I can remove the substances that are creating cravings, so that, little by little, the awareness, the abstinence actions, and then accountability, appreciation, assessment, and again, to go through it again, that we gain these opportunities to look at and become more aware of ourselves and of our relationships with others. In the book, it talks about two things to share each week. One is about food, and one is about some other aspect of my life that I want to make a change, and committing to that change, writing down the change. We have the smartest goals in here, to make them goals that you can actually do in a week. And sometimes my goals were like blue sky. I wanted, no, down to manageable, doable. I can do this. Can I manage my whole life? No. But can I do this one specific goal? And I write down things each morning that I want to accomplish that day. Do I accomplish all of them every single day? No. Some of them go on to the next day, and some I decide are not things that I want to accomplish. So I want to give myself the permission to, step back and say, I don't think I want to do that after all. All of that whole the A team process is really useful to continue to do on an ongoing basis. So even though we say 10 weeks and a few weeks to get started, it can be a continuing process, a cyclical change, which most of my life is cyclical, where I go through this process and then I'm one step higher on a continuum, and another round, and one step higher, and one step higher. So I may look out at the universe and say, I'm in exactly the same place as I was 5 years ago. And yet that's never true. Never true, because I'm moving up this continuum and seeing things that are similar, but not the same. They aren't the same. I am a different person. I've stepped in a different river, you know, all of those kinds of things. So getting started, being accountable to other people has been really useful to me. When I'm accountable to other people, I want to share with them. I want to be accountable to another, and I want other people to be accountable to me. And in that way, we share the responsibility and the experience of, we can help each other. We do not have to do this alone. We can't do it alone. It really is too hard to do alone. As a collective, as a group, as, having friends that I didn't have friends. I mean, I was too ashamed I lived in shame, in that sense of I'm a bad person. Now, I don't believe that anyone's a bad person. I don't believe that. I believe that we have done things that are bad. Yeah, I have. Maybe others have too. But I can make amends for those. I can change those things. I don't have to repeat them over and over again. So that accountability to others and acceptance of the fallibility that I have, that I make mistakes. I lived in a black and white world before abstinence, where it was this or that. And if you crossed over the line, you were bad. You were bad. I don't believe that today. I make mistakes. I have picked up something that I didn't know had grain or sugar in it and put it into my mouth. Sometimes I've swallowed it before I realized it had grain or sugar in it. Sometimes I've passed out after I've eaten something and thought, oh my God, what was that? You know? So, but I can accept that I made a mistake. It is not the end of the world. And I have to be really cautious and not pick up anything, you know, in close proximity to that, because I am in jeopardy. I'm in trigger land. I don't want to be there. So the only way out of there is to back out. I don't have to continue down on that path. And then to find appreciation, not only for myself, but for others, and for the trials and travails that people go through abstinently, that they choose to behave in the way that they've chosen to behave, as opposed to all of those other alternatives. And sometimes that's hard, with honesty and integrity and humor. I mean, to laugh at myself sometimes, just like, well, there, I did it again, you know. I'm like, oops. And assessing where I am, like this time of the year, my natal birthday was December 22nd. So
Oh,
it's,
happy birthday.
thank you. So that was my 75th birthday. And that's you know, like, wow, I am 75 years old. That is 3/4 of a century. My mother, whoa, my mother is 98. And so I possibly have more years to go. I'm not sure, don't know for sure, but I hope that I do. And I hope that all of us can have that, again, experience of assessing and then starting, where do I want to go this year? What do I want to accomplish this year? My husband and I are talking about getting a few things into storage and then setting out on the road and using our timeshares. So we may be in your neighborhood, and let us know where you are. We'll say hi. Not that we have to sleep where you are, but we could say hi and have a meal together, or share a conversation, or a smile, or a heartfelt gratitude for all of the work that you're doing in this field, and that you're helping to bring people into awareness that they may not have previously had. Shun Foreman, I want to do a shout out for her too, is an African-American woman that is doing her work, and her message is getting out into the world about African Americans do not have to be obese, do not have to eat too much sugar, do not have to eat any sugar, and that meals can be quite different than what we thought were meals. Like, I can have lamb, and I eat a fruit, but I can have lamb and fruit and coconut oil for breakfast. It doesn't have to be all those things I used to eat. I can have eggs and my new goat cheese, etc., for breakfast. I don't have to always have, or ever again have, those substances that I once relied upon. So meals can change, life can change, our psychiatry can change, everything. The body that I have, the pictures you'll post, I hope, will show you that
Definitely.
I look different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's you know, what you're talking about, I guess, makes me think those are the fruits of recovery, right? That you're able to dive into these, you know, looking into yourself, who you are, how you used to respond to things and make a decision about how you want to, going forward, and how you want to deal with the ups and downs of life. And we, I mean, I would assume that over time of doing this group, that you get better and better at, cultivating these fruits of recovery. And, I mean, I guess there's a lot of ways that people go through recovery, and I'm, sort of familiar with 12 steps. I mean, and, I think as much as anybody, what I learned on TV or what I see from people, but, it seems like, there are some people who, just come out of that with like, I don't know, this just amazing way of like being able to just operate through the world, and just very, I guess is the word that I speak of. And for those of us, I mean, some of us, me for sure, I mean, I guess I started using young in terms of, the sugar, and then, in high school, alcohol, and so on. And so, I feel like my skill sets in dealing with whatever my emotions are, they're stunted because I started using substances to deal with my emotions. And so I feel learning as an adult, like how to do that. I mean, I guess that is the job of recovery. That's what recovery is. And I don't know. I feel like it's hard to it's hard to find where where to learn those skills,
When
just
one of the things
things that
is,
adults try to do.
yeah, one of the things is to take them in little incremental steps, not to expect mountains moved immediately, just tiny baby steps, incremental steps, step by step by step. And that those are changes that come over time. So the Fix for Cravings is a means to start, and the stories that are in there share so many incremental steps that individuals took, and places where people went, oops, went back out and came back in. There's no one way to do this. But another resource is Paul Early is the director of the ASAM, the Addiction Medicine Group, and he has a workbook. He has a book that, after you've done the Fix for Cravings, I wouldn't start with his book. It's a little intense. But after the Fix for Cravings, that may be another resource to dip into and to see about the recovery program that he offers there. It's a really wonderful one.
Or what is his name?
His name is Paul Early, Earley, and the book has recovery in it. Let me look it up because I should have put it here, but I didn't think to put it. Or you may be able to find it faster than I can, but it's a resource that is really useful in terms of, recovery per se. Just, oh, my finger is not working on
Don't
my
worry about
computer.
it. I'll look
Did
for
you
it.
find it?
I'll
Okay,
look for it.
and put it in,
For later.
because
Mhm.
and I'll get it after this and send it to you too. It's usually on my desk here. Let me see. No, it's not on the desk. It sometimes is on the desk. So
That's okay.
anyway, Earley, and Paul, and it's an ASAM. He's the director of the medicine that has to do with Addiction Medicine Society. So that's a wonderful resource also. But and SugarX Global, Dave Wolf and Judy and Anna Freeling, Judy Wolf and Anna Freeling. That's a wonderful community as well. That sense of community of we're not doing it alone is tremendously important in terms of addiction, because addiction is isolation. It isolates us in terms of our own thinking about ourselves and about thinking about other people. And in recovery, these incremental steps, the developmental processes that all humans go through, and probably primates as well, I'm not sure. But all all of them are sort of step-by-step processes. So when I got like you, I started eating early, I started drinking early. I had not gained skill sets. We moved 21 times before I was 18 years old. So I hadn't learned how to have continuing relationships with anybody, not with my family members, not with anybody. So when I got sober at 24 and abstinent for a smidgen of time there, um, I was a tiny young child, and people said, "Well, you have to do things like parallel play. That's for little tiny children." But I needed to learn how to do parallel play. I needed to do the incremental steps of, at a later stage, learning how to go out in a group and have fun as a group, going skiing as a group, not with one person, but as a group. And I wanted to skip over those steps. It didn't work for me. I don't know for other people, but for me, it didn't. And then I needed to find how to relate to same-sexed people and then to opposite-sex people. But little by little by little, incrementally, I could learn those skill sets. But it took time. And, you know, that's one of the things. It just takes time. So we can improve the process by removing the substances and behaviors that are triggering for us. We can remove those. Then we have a clearer mind to be able to do all of the rest of the work, all of it. And so never despair, just continue the next step, the next step, the next step. And then you look out and you see a vista that's different than the one that you had seen previously. Never give up. Never give up.
Well, I'm really excited to do this. I think it's going to be, really, formative for the people who decide to participate. And so I wonder, like, how often should we meet? I mean, how often, when you did this with other people, like,
Uh-huh.
what was the mechanics like?
The mechanics are such that meeting weekly as a group was useful, and that we set a group and made a commitment to be there weekly for at least this first chunk of time, to go through the whole set once. And then subsequent to that, some people wanted to continue and as a small group, and other people wanted to continue with others involved and connected in. So, that's two different things, but it works in both ways. Another aspect is that in between those sessions weekly, having the accountability buddy or partner, so that I'm daily making those commitments and touching base with people within the group and with one person daily to fulfill my commitment, whatever those commitments are. That I may change my mind and decide I'm really not going to fulfill that's not appropriate at this time. But I need to say that to another person who's in the group to change that commitment to something else. And all of those things are daily changes. So the daily contact within the group is tremendous. In many of the 12-step programs, they talk about having a sponsor or an accountability buddy. And so that's one phone call a day. And then additionally, 3 other phone calls. And some people said early to me, have it be somebody who's newer than you, someone that's about the same as you, someone that's longer in recovery than you. And I thought, that's weird. But, it worked. It worked for me to have that, where I was sharing with somebody who was newer, less experienced than I, that I was sharing with someone who was about the same as I, because that person might be going through the same things as I, only just a few days before, a few days after. And we were like buddies, soul sisters. I mean, it was amazing to realize that I wasn't unique. I really wasn't. And then to make the phone calls to people that were longer in recovery. And sometimes I'd just say, hi and say a few words, and then they'd start talking, and it would just be like exactly what I needed to hear. How did they know that? So those are some other additional things, but having regular contact, not just the once a week, but it can grow as the groups grow. It can grow to be a daily group that is accessible to people every day at multiple times during the day. So as we expand in all of this, that's another alternative. I mean, that it really can grow into multiple groups, just as like Sugar X Global is one of those that has multiple multiple things during the day, and different kinds of groups in different time zones. That's another thing with this. One of the women that I know had started having a group every Monday. So every Monday she'd put into that group everybody that came new, during the week, and there'd be a new group every Monday. And that worked for her, and then as people were longer in it and sort of, some people were ready to leave and not participate after the set committed time, then they would come back around and join into another group that was going to continue. So there are lots of different ways. It's not just, one. It really is find what works for the groups that, that are convening. But that kind of collectivity, that kind of community, that kind of I fit in this. I am not alone. And having time for the breakouts so that, with Zoom, we can have breakouts so that people can be in smaller groups consistently, or smaller groups, but they're changing consistently. But the commitment is to be an ongoing commitment, that I'm making this commitment this week, these two commitments. So one for food and one for some other behavior or change. So does that help?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So I think that's going to be really wonderful, and I'm excited to see what the Black Carnivores make of it. So everybody watching, I encourage you on the link and sign up and watch this interview again, watch the one with David Wolf again, and get the book, of course. Can you hold up the book? I think you have.
Yes, I
Uh,
do. And on
can
my
read it.
website, you can get it a signed copy from me or a signed copy from Dave on his website. So please check that out. All right. And you're going to post
Absolutely.
those, right?
Yeah,
Thank,
absolutely. And the book
thank.
is great. Not only the process of doing, work within a group, but it has a whole section with tons of stories of recovery from different people around their food addiction. And it's really helpful to hear, all the different ways, because I think that, as you've said, we as addicts, we isolate. And so, we think that our story is the worst it ever is, that no one will ever understand, that it is like nothing else. But in fact, it might be just incredibly common. And so it really helps to read other people's stories and see where we are, in this space. And it was helpful to, see where I'm different and where I fit right in, and see where this program would really be helpful and allow me to, live, because that's the goal, right? We always talk about with carnivore, the goal isn't to be a perfect carnivore. The goal is to, eat this way so you feel great and you can go out and live your life and do all the things that you want to do, and not have to worry about food or your body or your health anymore. So that is the goal, true freedom.
Well, along that line, I'm in January going to take a ski better week with my sister, who's 71, in in Taos, New Mexico. And then we have another week of skiing there with her stepson and grandchildren. So am I living my life and doing genealogy, genograms, sugar assessments? I mean, I'm working with Food Addiction Institute to get the DSM to include food addiction as a label that can receive treatment, appropriate treatment, abstinence from the substances or behaviors that are problematic for an individual, as opposed to moderating, abstinence from those substances and behaviors so that we can live the life you're talking about. And thank you so much for this opportunity to share. And what a delight to meet you and talk with you and experience this. And in any way that I can help, please feel free to reach out. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And Black Carnivores, have a great week, and I will see you all next week. And I'm excited to get started with this. So if you're interested, sign up below. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you.